My name is Muhammad Zanuar Irsyad, and my student's number is 1921222102. Here I would like to explain about the definition of nominalization and grammatical metaphor. Okay, nominalization defined by functional linguistics is the process of deriving nouns from other word classes. For example, education for educate or importance for important. Nominalization includes two common types, that is verbal and adjectival nominalization, which can be formed by adding derivational suffix to a verb or an adjective. For example, master into the word mastery, or by changing the verb internally, for example, to plant into the word plan. And the fourth linguistic concept that is considered to have interrelated relationship with lexical density and nominalization is grammatical metaphor. Okay, so what is a grammatical metaphor? Grammatical metaphor, originally proposed by Holiday, is a substitution of one grammatical class or one grammatical structure by another's. And Holiday also explained that congruent forms are the natural ways that language encodes the meaning they express, and the non-congruent ways of encoding language are viewed by as metaphorical expression or grammatical metaphor. Okay, thank you, and the next material will be explained by my friend. Thank you.
Okay, hello, my name is Muhammad Rizki Gunadi. My student's number is 192122088. So let's continue the material. And here we have two types of this, and there are additional metaphor and interpersonal metaphor. And my part is about additional metaphor, or we can say metaphor of transitivity. So what is additional metaphor? Regarding Fancy 2, that said, additional metaphor which expresses experiential meaning. That's the point, which expresses experiential meaning, and it is mostly characterized through the transitivity system. So when we want to characterize this additional metaphor to get expresses experiential meaning, we use a transitivity system. So it is realized by six main processes such as material, mental, relational, verbal, existential, and behavioral. It's same with what we have learned about transitivity system before. Well, we're gonna review it. So each process comprises three elements, namely process, participants, and circumstance. And it is depending on different process, participants, and circumstance can be interpreted as transitivity function like actor, goal, sensor, manner, carrier, and many else. Well, regarding holiday, that said proposed that to interpret a clause in its additional function as the representation of a process, there three passages should be included. What are they? Number one is choices of process type, such as material, mental, relational, verbal, and existential and behavioral, which releases. Is number two is configuration of transitivity function such as actor, goal, sensor, manner, carrier, identifier, sayer, receiver, existent, and behavior, which release in us. And number three is categorization of group praise classes such as verbal group, nominal group, adverbial group, propositional phrase, and their various subclasses. That is the three pages that should be included to representation of process in each clause. Okay, let's see the example here. There is one clause that is Mary saw something. Okay, let's analyze in the first page. And this is based on a process type. So saw is a process mental, of course. And then next to number two pages, it's based on configuration of transitive function. And so Mary is a sensor, and then something is a phenomenon. And then the last is three pages, and it is based on categorization of group phrase classes. Okay, so Mary is a nominal group, so is a verbal group, and something is a nominal group. That is the example how Holiday said about interpret a clause in its additional function. Thank you very much.
My name is Dhinny Auralia Agustina Putri. My student's number is 192122094. And now I'm going to continue the presentation. Another type of grammatical metaphor is interpersonal metaphor, which expresses the interpersonal relationships or interaction between the speaker or writer and listener or reader. The interpersonal meaning can be seen by means of evaluative words, modality, and mood. Interpersonal metaphor consists of metaphor of mood and metaphor of modality. The first one is metaphor of modality. Tavernier in 2003 explains about Holiday's concept of modality metaphor as follows. In metaphors of modality, the grammatical variation which occurs is based on the logico-semantic relationship of projection. Various modal meanings are congruently realized in modal elements in the clause, in this case, modal operators, modal adjuncts, or mood adjuncts. Interpersonal metaphors are defined by Holiday as expressing modal meanings outside the clause. In this way, metaphors of modality are explicit realizations of modal meanings. Speakers can express their opinions in separate clause in various ways. And according to Holiday, modal meaning or a degree of certainty is conveyed through modal items that occur within the clause which is being modally evaluated. For example, to express the likelihood of David has left, a modal verb must or certainly can be used, as can be seen in examples. David must have left. David will certainly have left. Must and certainly are the expressions of modality from Holiday's point of view. However, a high degree of certainty can also be expressed by employing elements outside the clause such as think, likely, believed, clear, which are considered expression of interpersonal metaphors of modality. So here is the example. I think David has already left. It is very likely that David has already left. Everyone believes that David has already left. It is clear that David has already left. The second is metaphor of mood. Another grammatical area which belongs to the interpersonal component of language is the grammar of mood. This is the grammar of interrogatives, declaratives, imperatives, and the like. The choice between these different mood types enables us to argue about propositions. For example, we can ask information by means of a question using the interrogative mood. And then we can give information by means of statement using the declarative mood. And last, uh, to negotiate about actions to take place. For example, we can express a comment by using the imperative mood. The expression of statements and questions is fairly straightforward, but with regard to comments, the situation is different. There is a large variety of expressions that can be used to express the same comment. For example, send your proposal by email, please. And then in metaphor, could you send your proposal by email, please? I would advise you to send it by email. You are kindly requested to send your proposal by email. It is recommended that you send your proposal by email. It is advisable to send your proposal by email. Halliday brings together these various expressions under the heading of the notion of interpersonal metaphor of mood. The reason why these examples are regarded as metaphorical lies in the fact that they deviate from the standard, most straightforward realizations of a comment by means of the imperative mood. Their metaphorical nature can be made clear by pointing to the literal meanings that these expressions have. So maybe that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, I will show you the example of grammatical metaphor. As you can see in example A, Mary is sensor, so is mental process, and something is phenomenon. Meanwhile, in B sample, Mary is actor, came upon is material process, and sight is goal. And in sample C, a actor is sight, the material process is math, and the goal is eyes. If you notice, in example A, so is material process, but in sample B and C, it changed to sight, in which means its goal and actor. They are representation of same state but not identical. The difference in wording lead to difference of entire meaning.
Hello, I'm Winda Grizela and I will explain about the sample analysis. So, we take the following example given by Blur and Blur, a sentence from a medical research abstract. So, this is the paragraph. The GDP counts contributed to intraoperative decision making in 3 patients by localization of tumor not identified by inspection of palpation. GDP means gamma detecting probe and palpation means feeling with the hands. In the above medical extract, the agency, in this case human participants, is distant from the data. If we try to render this in a more congruent form that involves human agency, we may come up with this variant as cited by Blur and Blur above. So that paragraph becoming like this. Someone used a GDP and by using the figures which came up, surgeons could decide what to do while they were operating on 3 patients. They could do this because they could find precisely where a tumor was even though this had not been found out by palpating the patient's bodies. So the first thing we note in these 2 versions is that the second is more verbose than the first one. The first shows evidence of high literacy in the medical field than the second, owing to the high prevalence of nominalization. And finally, the second is less likely to be used by professionals in the medical field. To render a nominalized text in its congruent form involves a process referred to as unpacking.
Hello, so here I will explain about the
Conclusion, all of the material that we have explained in the previous presenter. So first is about nominalization, changing a verb or other word into a noun is called nominalization. Formal written English uses nouns more than verbs. Like for example, judgment rather than judge, development rather than develop, admiration rather than admire. So that's we call nominalization. Like an example that this information enables us to formulate precise questions. We would write this information enables the formulation of precise questions. The next is grammatical metaphor. As you know, the previous presenter have explained about grammatical metaphor. So metaphor, as you know, phenomenon in language. Metaphor refers to a kind of movement from one thing to another. One thing is carried beyond itself to something different. All the senior managers will be swept out. Another example, he didn't grasp it. And grammatical metaphor has two meta function. First is the additional meta function. It focuses on the role of language in representing and shaping reality. Okay, maybe I give some example for the additional meta function, like Mary liked the present very much. Also, the book is very interesting. So for the example, the first example, which has refers to a process, like which has two participating entities or participants, Mary and the present. And the next is the interpersonal meta function. It focuses on the role of language in enacting interpersonal relations and in creating intersubjective position through linguistic interaction. So the working of the interpersonal metafunction can most clearly be seen in language in the expression of subjective meanings through evaluative words. Okay, so the additional and interpersonal metafunctions are complementary and constitute the major component of language. In the systematic functional model, they are seen as being further supported by a third metafunction, the textual metafunction. So the textual metafunction has to do with the textual organization of language and deals with, for example, the positioning of new information and given information in a longer stretch of discourse. Maybe that's enough for the conclusion. Thank you.